welcome back an old friend. He's writing another damn book.
Another one?
Another one. Mike Florio.
The dozens of copies the last one sold?
Dude, I booked him.
I'm just messing with you.
Good, Mike.
I know he's listening.
Mike, that was RJ
Really?
Choppy, Mike.
Really? Hey, Chat GPT is a wonderful thing. Nothing makes you productive when it comes to writing, like just putting in a few keywords and off you go. And then I'm kidding. You know, it's just something I told you guys before. It's something I started doing during the pandemic, and it really balances out what I do all day long. All day long, I'm generating content that is relevant for maybe a day, and it's fun to create something out of nothing that isn't, you know, irrelevant by the next day. And my theory is if I write enough of these books, one of them will not suck. One of them will maybe take hold and people will read it and enjoy it. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to get people to buy it at the same time you're crapping on my past efforts. Thank you so much.
What is this one about?
This one is a Christmas book that I wrote in December of 2021. It was an idea that I'd had for about 10 or 15 years. It's called On Our Way Home. It lands at the intersection of A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, but I think it's a selling point. Right before Christmas, the main character keeps running into the ghosts of his parents, and he doesn't realize who they are. But obviously, as the book goes on, he, you know, figures it out and what they want, et cetera, et cetera. But it's something that's available for $3.99 as the ebook on Amazon, $9.99 in print, and every penny I get is going to go to our local Humane Society of Harrison County, a no-kill shelter that takes care of dogs and cats waiting for their permanent homes. I'm not trying to make a penny off of it. I posted it for free on the website last year, one chapter at a time, like an advent calendar, and people really liked it. So I thought, all right, this year we'll sell it and we'll make a little money and we'll give it to a good cause.
Heck yeah. What's the name of it?
It's On Our Way Home. It's on Amazon. You can get it right now.
We'll go ahead and tweet it out. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, on the Boomer Jacks Bar and Grill hotline. Things heating up in Carolina for Frank Reich with the way things have gone with Bryce Young this year, as they are the Cowboys' probable next victim on Sunday?
Well, Frank Reich gave up play calling duties to offensive coordinator Thomas Brown 3 games ago, and now he's taking them back. Chris Sims and I were just talking about this on our morning show, PFT Live, and I think it's a very simple explanation. I think he delegated the play calling to Thomas Brown because he thought that's what owner David Tepper wanted him to do. And I think he's taking back the play calling because David Tepper has decided after 3 games that Frank Reich should be the one calling the plays. And not that an owner – now, you know, the usual owner who isn't also the GM of the team is in a position where they can be subtle. You don't have to give orders. You don't have to say draft that quarterback or make this move or sign that player. You just have a way of making it known what you would like to see happen, what your preference would be, or wouldn't it be nice if we did this? And the people who are smart enough to want to continue to work for the billionaire that expresses his or her preferences goes out and does it. So Tepper, I think, meddles, maybe not as directly as the guy who also holds the title of GM, but I think he's got his ladle deep in the stew, spinning it around, and I think that's why Reich made that decision yesterday to take back the play calling.
Mike, what was you and Chris Sims' assessment of Bryce Young coming out, and what is your assessment of him now?
Chris had Bryce Young below C.J. Stroud. And look, I'm surprised he went first overall simply because of the copycat nature of the NFL. And when you've got Tua Tagovailoa last year getting ragdolled all over the place and suffering multiple concussions because he's not big enough, here's a guy who's even smaller. There's nothing to Bryce Young. He's little, he's short, and he doesn't have that thick football build. Can you withstand the pounding? Can you operate among these people who are all bigger, faster, stronger than anything you've ever seen? And I know he got it done in Alabama, but it's still a very different thing to come to the NFL and do it. And, you know, what about him is off the charts, franchise quarterback, special?
Nothing.
They love his processing. I just don't know that he processes fast enough yet to get the most out of those skills. And it sure looks like the Panthers blew it by trading up. And I fault the Panthers for trading up because you put even more pressure on the kid by trading up and making him the first overall pick. But C.J. Stroud has been great, and Bryce Young still has a long way to go.
Does it – I mean, are we getting to the point, though, where, I mean, we are trying way too quick to pin these guys onto something? It's been, 7-8 games for him.
Well, you're right, but that's how it is in today's NFL. they make those decisions on guys very quickly. Trey Lance got run out of San Francisco after 2 seasons, and he hardly played, and he was the 3rd overall pick. The clock ticks, the game moves, and you have limited opportunities to prove that you belong. And when you've got – and he's lucky Anthony Richardson isn't playing, because if Richardson had been playing and playing well, then you got 2 guys that the Panthers passed on that are better than the guy they picked. And what it does – and this is why I think it's a mistake to trade up and make a quarterback the 1st overall pick and put all that pressure on him, because you do have not many opportunities to show that you've got it. And it can spiral out of control quickly, and before you know it, a guy's labeled a bust. You used to get 5 years. Now you're lucky to get a 3rd year. Maybe you get 2 years. And I think for some of these quarterbacks, especially because you don't have a massive financial commitment anymore due to the 2011 CBA that greatly reduced what those top picks get, and it used to tie teams' hands for multiple years. You could get rid of a guy after 1 year if you want to. I mean, look, the Cardinals did that.
Yeah.
They got rid of Josh Rosen, a top 10 pick, after 1 year and moved on to Kyler Murray. So not that the Panthers can draft another high-end quarterback, because their first-round pick this year is in the possession of the Bears.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, joins us here, 105 through the Fan. Is the Bill Mack?
Hang on, I got one more on the Cowboys. How are you feeling about Dak Prescott MVP talk?
The Cowboys would have to be the number 1 seed for Dak to be the MVP. That's the way it works. One of the quarterbacks from one of the top seeds in either conference ends up getting the votes. Now, the wrinkle this year is if the Texans get to the playoffs, maybe C.J. Stroud can pull enough votes, and they do a 5-person ballot now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's weighted. I could see a situation where no one is overwhelmingly the first choice, but if enough people make C.J. Stroud the second choice, maybe he could pull it off if the Texans win enough to get to the postseason. But I think for Dak to be MVP, they've got to be the number 1 seed. And then the question is there anybody else on the Cowboys like Micah Parsons that would take away any of his votes? I don't think so. I think Dak would be the guy, but they got to be the 1 seed, and they can be. You look at the schedule. They're in a position where with the games the Eagles have coming up, which are tough, the Cowboys could overtake the division, and the Cowboys could still overtake the conference, especially if they can handle the Lions Week 17, because I think the Lions are the other team that's quietly the threat to be the 1 seed in the NFC.
Can you try to use some of your sway, a little bit of your pull, to give this MVP to a non-quarterback finally?
I have a vote.
You do?
Look at you.
When's the last time you voted for a non-quarterback, if you can remember?
Well, I've only had the vote for 2 years, so I can't remember my ballot last year. And again, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I can't remember. I can find my ballot. I can't remember if I had a non-quarterback on it. I mean, Adrian Peterson won it in 2012, but it's kind of morphed into this thing where a quarterback from one of the best 2 teams, 1 seed in the AFC, 1 seed in the NFC, is the guy who gets it, unless somebody does something historic or close to it. That's how Adrian Peterson took it from Peyton Manning in 2012. He made that late run at the single-season rushing record, and it made him the MVP. That's what it's going to take. That's why Tyreek Hill has a chance this year. Yeah. If he gets 2,000 receiving yards. A.J. Brown, if the Eagles end up the 1 seed in the NFC, I'm likely going to make A.J. Brown MVP over Jalen Hurts this year because of what he's meant to that team. So I would do the same thing with Tyreek Hill if the Dolphins are the 1 seed in the AFC. But so much of it comes down to that final playoff tree, who's the 1 seed in each conference. And I think by then it becomes obvious who the MVP candidates are.
What does the future hold for Mac Jones and Bill Belichick in New England?
I don't think there's a future for either one of them in New England. I think with Belichick, it's a foregone conclusion. He'll be gone after the season. I don't know that, but come on, look at what's going on. And there's been no effort by anyone to push back and say he will definitely be here next year. This goes back to March when Robert Kraft was asked at the league meetings, will Bill Belichick be around long enough to pass Don Shula for the all-time wins record, or does he have to get to the playoffs this year? And the way that Kraft answered it, I mean, he's got to get to the playoffs this year. That was, I think, the fair interpretation. The real question is, how does it end? Is he fired? Does he resign? Does he retire? Is there a mutual parting, or is he traded to another team? And I think based upon some reporting from NFL Network over the weekend, they're setting this up for someone to call now discreetly between now and the end of the season, somebody who's going to be looking for a coach, work out a deal in advance, line up the dominoes, and then at the right moment after the season ends, you just flick the first one. A team I'd watch would be the Buccaneers. I'd watch the Commanders. I'd keep an eye on the Panthers. All it takes is one team to think, you know what? If we just put the right help around Bill Belichick, if we put guardrails on his personnel ability, because his personnel authority, because that's what's gotten him in trouble in recent years. He's not as good of a GM as he needs to be. You could have something. He could have a great second act. He could sell a lot of tickets, get your primetime games. A lot of these irrelevant teams out there would love to have a guy like Bill Belichick for a few years just to make themselves into a relevant team when they otherwise wouldn't be.
Mike Florio here on The Fan. Do you think Belichick would give up the GM duties?
Well, that's what's going to be a hard sell. You're going to have to get him to be willing to work with someone who would be able to help keep him from making mistakes. And that's why the Buccaneers are fascinating, because Jason Light has that history and relationship with Belichick. He's worked in New England before. I've suggested, why don't they bring back Scott Pioli and reunite him with Belichick? Pioli was the guy who set the table for the first 3 Super Bowl wins, and then Nick Caserio was around for the next 3, although he's tied up with the Texans, and he and DeMeco Ryans are working pretty well together. But you just need somebody that can protect Belichick from the mistakes he's made when it comes to personnel. The Jack Jones release earlier this week, the 4th-round corner from Arizona State, I was told by somebody after that happened, anybody that did their homework on Jack Jones was not touching the guy because there was a belief that he just wasn't going to make it in the NFL. Now, the Raiders claimed him because it reunited him with Antonio Pierce, his high school coach, and maybe that's what he needs. But that's an example of the kind of mistakes that the Patriots are now making. If you could just get Belichick to coach and you have someone you can trust to set the table, then maybe Belichick could be successful again, and maybe he'd be willing to step aside from personnel, understanding I just need to focus on coaching.
How ugly are things about to get in Buffalo?
Well, pretty ugly when you consider they're 5-5, and they still have games against the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Dolphins coming up. I think they're not going to make the playoffs. I think Sean McDermott is in serious danger of being fired. He scapegoated Leslie Frazier last year with kind of a weird, belated, soft, non-firing firing, and now McDermott's in charge of the defense. He fired Ken Dorsey this week. If they don't have 12 guys on the field for that field goal attempt that went wide, is Dorsey getting fired the next day? I think that McDermott felt like he had to do something to just quiet the noise that otherwise would be directed at him. If they don't make the playoffs, and they've got this franchise quarterback in Josh Allen who needs to be fixed. He needs an offensive head coach who can get the most out of him, like Brian Daboll did when Daboll was there as the offensive coordinator. So I think if they don't make the playoffs, I will not be surprised at all if there's a new head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Not Bill Belichick, somebody who is offensive-minded, who can really work with Allen and make him reach his full potential.
So Lincoln Riley or Jim Harbaugh, are they on the NFL radar?
Well, I haven't heard that Riley's on the NFL radar. It's not like USC's had a great year. Jim Harbaugh was interviewed by the Vikings 2 years ago, and he thought he was getting that job when he left Ann Arbor to go for the sit-down with the Wilfs. Last year, Greg Penner, the owner of the Broncos, went to Ann Arbor to meet with Harbaugh at a time when it wasn't clear whether they were going to hire Sean Payton or not. So, I think as we digest more and more of this sign stealing thing and all the stuff that's been going on. I mean, at first the NFL tried to put out the idea that maybe they would suspend Harbaugh, whatever the NCAA suspends him, which makes no sense to me other than to placate college football, which is the NFL's free farm system. I think there may be a path for Harbaugh back to the NFL, and he has been very successful. You can't, even though it's been a while, 2011, his first year, they almost get to the Super Bowl. 2012, it was a 6-win team in 2010. 2012, they get to the Super Bowl and almost win it. The next year, they almost get back to the Super Bowl. And then by 2014, he and Trent Baalke weren't getting along, so off goes Jim Harbaugh. So teams can do a lot worse than Jim Harbaugh as their head coach if an NFL team is ready to pull that trigger.
Tell us about the Christmas book one more time.
Well, again, it's on Amazon, $3.99 for the ebook, $9.99 for the paperback. On Our Way Home, a Christmas tale that lands at the intersection of A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life, and every penny I make goes straight to our local shelter, the Humane Society of Harrison County, which takes care of dogs and cats looking for good homes. And I appreciate you guys giving me the chance to get some folks to buy it. And here's the idea. Here's the thing. You're in that mode right now where you got to get Christmas gifts for people. If there are people who read PFT, right, buy 10 of them, they're cheap, and you've got Christmas gifts. You can check boxes off of your list. Not what can you buy for someone that costs $9.99? What can you buy them?
Now, you
Not
know,
much.
I still want a free one for my 3-year-old. I got a 3-year-old.
You want a free book for your 3-year-old?
Yeah, I want you to send me a free one.
For a 3-year-old? You have a 3-year-old that can read a book?
I'm gonna read him the Christmas Tales.
Yeah, what is the age on this? What is the age recommendation on this
There's
book?
some language in there that kids got to learn sometime.
You wrote a naughty Christmas book.
So this is not a children's Christmas
It's
book.
not Bad Santa, but it's there's just a few words in there. And now the theme is probably more mature than what a 3-year-old can handle, especially because it has some spoilers about the thing the 3-year-old's eventually going to learn when the 3-year-old gets older.
Oh, wow. I don't know what you're
I
talking about there.
knew that this was way too warm and fuzzy for Mike Florio to be writing. We'll tweet it out, and we'll have you back on again to do it before the big day, December 25th. Thank you, Mikey.
Thanks, guys.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com on Shan and RJ.